As I alluded to yesterday, the next shape I want to look at that's separate, and I am going to spend a little more time on this one, is a circle. Okay, circle is a very special shape. For one, it does not have any sides. So, where you had the quadrilaterals from yesterday, 4 sides. Pentagon 5 sides, hexagon 6, septagon 7, octagon 8, and so on. Nonagon is 9, decagon 10. But you've got these names of sided shapes, and it's all based on how many sides it has. Triangle is funny because it actually goes by the angles. There's 3 angles, but it has 3 sides. Circle does not have sides, so it doesn't fit into the categories sometimes of the other ones. One thing about a circle, though, and I've tried my best to draw a perfect circle. That's probably going to be one of my better ones, just to be honest with you. Is the key factor is, I always ask students when I'm in the classroom, like, how would you describe a circle? And I get the word round a lot. It's a round shape, or it goes around. The only problem with that is this is also a round shape, an oval, or you could even draw like a shape like that didn't even really, it's round. So we have to look at, well, what makes a circle different than these? Why can't you just say it's round? Well, what makes a circle special is all of these points out here. All of these points out here are the same distance away from this center point. So like this point out here, if it's 5 inches away, then so is this point out here. It's also 5 inches away. That's what makes a circle special. That's why in school, when they had you draw perfect circles, they gave you that little tool that had the pointy end and then the pencil on the other. It looked like almost like chopsticks or something. You put the pointy end and then went around. That way you kept that pencil exactly the same distance all the way around. Now we would turn those into like weapons a lot of times when we were younger. Kind of like protractors too. We made them like brass knuckles. But this is how you put that pointy in here and then go with your pencil, and it kept every point out here the same distance away. See, you can't do that with an oval. If this looks like maybe 4 inches, this may only be about 2 inches away. So it's not the same distance as it is out here. That's what makes it not a circle. So that's the first thing about a circle is all the distances away from the center are the same distance away. Now we're big on names with geometry. My circle has a bubble now. So I'm going to call this like the gas station that you see out west, Circle K. So it is named by its center point. So if this was an L, it'd be Circle L, or an X, it'd be Circle X. Now how you draw that is just like make a little circle, and it's Circle K. So instead of like angle K, it's Circle K. Okay. So that's the name for that one. Then there's parts of a circle that are very important. So this is where you have to know the names. The first one, I've already said it. It's the center. Okay. So that center is point K. Okay. That's the center. Then you've got a word called a radius. You may have seen these before. The radius is a segment that goes from the center to one of the outside points. And that's what I was talking about. The measurements are all the same. So if this radius is 4, then you could draw another radius and it would be 4. Or you could draw a radius out here and it would be 4. And so on. But that segment from here to here, and let's make that, let's make a couple different radii here. KS. Now, the only one that matters what order you go in is the radius. You got to start kind of like the ray. You got to start at the center and go out. So KS is a radius. Another radius, so I'm going to put a comma to list another one, is KN. Okay, that's another radius. Maybe this was KL or something. That's another radius. Okay. So those are radius that on that circle. Okay. Let me start over now. Let's do another point. Okay, let's keep it K though. And let's go all the way across. And the key is we're going to go all the way across and go through the center. So we went all the way across and we went through the center. Now remember, we don't have to list 3 letters to name a segment. So this segment is going to be RS, and it could have also been called SR. Okay, with this one, you don't have to worry about which one you start with because you're not starting at the center. So RS or SR, that is called a diameter. Now think about it. KR is a radius. It's from the center out. Let's say it's 6. And same thing with KS. It's a radius. It's 6. So a diameter, by default then, a diameter is twice as long as a radius. So if this radius is 6, then the diameter is 12. If the radius is 3, then the diameter is 6. If the radius is 2, then the diameter is 4. If the radius is 20, the diameter is 40. I'm doubling it every time. So the length of the diameter is always twice as long as the radius, okay? Another one, and I'm going to keep the diameter up there so that you can see the difference. I'm going to draw this, okay? And here's the special thing about it. It goes from one side to the other just like a diameter did, except it did not go through the middle, or it did not go through the center. So in that case, that's called a chord. So JT or TJ, however you, whichever order, because it doesn't matter what order you went in, is a chord. Now, here's what gets kind of confusing. RS is also a chord. It goes from one side to the other. So it can be called a chord, but because it goes through the center, we're going to be more specific and call it a diameter. It's kind of like that cat thing I was talking about yesterday. We're going to be the most specific and call it a diameter. So if it just goes from one side to the other without going through the center, it's a chord. Okay. A couple other ones. Let me start over here. Is okay, staying with K, and now I'm going to draw a line through it and keep it going and have this WX, even if it doesn't keep going, but it cuts through and goes past the circle. So now we're not talking about going from one end to the other, we're cutting through the circle, okay, and we've got, but it goes through it, it hits it at 2 points. That is called a secant, S-E-C-A-N-T. So WX or XW, whichever order you went in, is a secant. Okay, and then the last term on here for, well, as a piece of the circle is, okay, I'm going to go and I'm going to hit this circle, just at 1 point, okay? So it didn't cut through the circle, it just hit the circle at 1 point. Well, I liken that to a conversation that, you know, you're talking about something and then you go off another, and you have just one thing in common with that conversation. That's called a tangent. Okay, and so that's what this line is, and let's say it's VY. Okay, so VY is a tangent on the circle. It goes and hits the circle at 1 point, but then goes off in a different direction. That's called a tangent. So VY is a tangent. Okay? And because I kept it going, I'm just going to make that a line. Okay? Could have been a segment though. So VY is a tangent. Okay? Alright, so that's some of the pieces of the circle. One other thing is, let's go back to the chord. I keep adding ones on, but I think of other ones. And I know they're on our final, well, even though we're not taking the final, it's on, we're taking a test over this, but basically, if you've got this chord here, so let's see, our chord was JT, this part of the circle that's been cut, so like this line is JT, and that's a chord. Okay, so that's the chord. But this part of the circle, this measurement here, that's the outside that's been cut by the chord, is an arc. Okay, and you would still name it JT, but instead of putting the line segment, you're going to curve that line and call it an arc. Arc JT. Okay, and I've curved that line. So it's the same letters, but see this measurement, whatever, maybe it's 5 inches, is the chord, but this is going to be a different measurement, and it's going to be the arc. Okay, but it still goes from J to T, okay? So that's an arc. All right, so none of that involves math, though, as far as working any numbers, except for radius and diameter. But this thing that I'm going to show you here actually then does take measurements, and that's the circumference. And that's a big word, but it doesn't have to be difficult. So remember, a circle doesn't have any sides. So think back like when we did rectangles in math lab. In math lab, we talked about perimeter, going around the outside. Well, that's what a circumference is, except we don't call it perimeter anymore, but it is measuring the distance around. It's like taking a string and going around the circle and then laying that string out and seeing out how far around the circle is. So it's like perimeter, but you can't just add up the sides because there are no sides. So to find the circumference, we have to use a formula. And I know when I say formula, everybody gets just like fractions. It's like, oh no. But really, it's a simple formula. And to find the circumference, this is going to involve math, but we're going to find the circumference, we're going to take the diameter and we're going to multiply it times pi. So the formula is pi times diameter. Now that pi is a Greek letter. It's actually a Greek letter of the alphabet, like our letter Z or V or X. It's a Greek letter, pi, but it's on your calculator, and it's like 3.14, and then it keeps going. But you will have it on your calculator. So if I bring up my calculator, and if you're using your phone calculator, you turn it sideways, there's that Greek letter pi. It looks just like that, okay? It's a pi button. And so to do a problem with this, it's very, very simple, but you got to know the diameter. That has to be given to you. So let's say the diameter is 7. So that diameter is 7. Okay, just to quiz you though, the radius then would be 3.5, 3.5, okay? But the diameter is 7. All you would do in your calculator to find the circumference is take 7, okay, so put in your diameter, times pi, and then equals. And in this case, rounded to the nearest hundredth is 21.99. So try that, pause the video, put in the calculator 7 times pi, you should come up with 21.99. Now it keeps going, I just rounded to the nearest hundredth, but that's what you do with that. Let's try another one. Let's say the diameter is 6.2. Let's say it's not even a whole number, it's 6.2. Well, all you do is 6.2 times pi. So I go 6.2, oops, 6.2 times pi. And I get 19.48 rounded to the nearest hundred, okay? So that's all you do. That's all you have to do is pi times diameter. Now, one little wrinkle to that is, what if they only give you the radius? So let's say they give you the radius as 4. Okay. Well, now some people have even wrote this formula as 2 pi r, double the radius. I think it's just as easier to think, well, I need to just double my radius to get my diameter. Okay, so I'm not going to use 4. I'm not going to do 4 times pi. I'm going to do 8 times pi. I'm going to double that radius and then do times pi. So in that case, let's try that. 8 times pi is 25.13, rounded to the nearest hundredth. And that's what I'm going to have you do on these, is round to the nearest hundredth. That's most of the time when you see geometry problems, it's rounded to the nearest hundredth. Let me do another one, just to give you one more example of a radius. Let's say they say the radius is 3.2. Well, all you need to do is double that, so it's 6.4 times pi. So we go 6.4 times pi. Pi button. And so that's 20.11 rounded to the nearest hundredth. Okay, so try those, make sure that's what you're coming up with. Okay, and let me put your assignment up there for this one. Okay, so you have your notes, make sure you've got those from the parts of the circle, and then I want you to find the circumference of these, okay? and round to the nearest hundredth. So round these to the nearest hundredth. Okay, that's 2 spots after the decimal. Okay, the first one, I don't even have to draw circles. I'm just going to give you the diameter is 4. The second one, the diameter is 12. Third one, the diameter is 7.5. Then I'm going to give you some with just radius. So remember what you have to do with that. Radius is 5, but you're still finding the circumference. Radius is 30. And number 6, the radius is 5.7. Okay? Remember your formula is pi times diameter. All right? So work those. So these here, you got to find your diameter first and then work. Okay? All right.